Good evening, positive people. Buenas noches. Bonjour. Bon dia. Buongiorno. Ni hao. Memenjes. Dobre utro. Namaste. Sawadi. Chawim. Manga nangu manga. Como ye? Sopa wanang sung. Assalamu alaikum. Privet. Guten Tag. Kalimara. And as they say in some neighborhoods, what's good? My name is Kevin Booker Jr.
And I'm Daisy Torres.
And welcome to the Cultural Flipside. Daisy, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm excited. I'm just blessed to be here. Another show. I'm really excited about our guest today. But first, right? Bienvenidos. Gracias por estar aquí con nosotros hoy. Hola, mi gente, right? Always want to give a shout out to my people. We love you. We're glad that you're tuning in. Thank you for being on the Cultural Flipside today.
And next week, Paulina Batista, she's going to make a special announcement on our next show. So definitely be on the lookout because she's coming back. She's going to make an announcement when she comes back from Brazil. And we love you. We miss you, yes. Paulina. So can't wait to have you back on the show to make that special announcement. Yes. Awesome.
I can't wait to see her and hear all about how it's been in Brazil.
Absolutely.
Are you kidding?
Oh
I love
gosh.
it. I can't wait. We miss you, Pauline. Can't wait to see you. But before we get started, I just want to give our viewers, I want to take us back to last week's show.
Uh-oh.
We had an amazing show. If you tuned in, if you recall, we had Dr. Miguel Cardona. Mm-hmm. We had a fabulous panelist of educators around the state.
Had Dr. Michael Connor. We had Shakira Perez, 2020 Teacher of the Year in Hartford, Connecticut. And we have an awesome parent with her daughter, Faith Satterfield and Winter Satterfield.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
It was a great show. So if you didn't check it out, you can go back and look at it on our webpage. But there was something that we said on that show, if you recall. And so Shakira was our guest. She was the 2020 Harvard's Teacher of the Year. And Shakira mentioned
Ron, don't put that picture up there.
You two went to prom together.
Yeah, we did. We went to a junior prom together. I was a senior at the time.
Would like to see this picture of the two of you.
Taking me back to my high school days. I was probably like about 40 pounds lighter than, I
bet you look exactly the same too.
Yeah, without the bald head and,
Well, certain little birdie told me that we may be able to see that. So that's awesome, that little picture. Come on, can we take a look at it, right?
Oh my God. Boy. You brought me back to the days.
Oh my God, look at you.
Boy.
You still have the same face.
Oh my gosh.
I love the blue.
Yeah. I was looking fly. I got to give myself a little bit of props.
Look at you. No, he didn't. I can't even.
Got the bow tie on too in there.
I love that. Now, where did this happen? Where did you guys go to prom?
This was at the Ramada and I think downtown Hartford.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah, that was a beautiful night.
I love it. I love throwback. I won't show you mine, but that'll be another show.
I can't wait.
That'll be another show.
You know I'm going to see that.
Wonderful. This is so exciting. We are excited about today's show. Tell the viewers a little bit about what we're in for.
So today we have some awesome guests on our show today. We're going to talk about racism as a public health crisis.
Big topic.
And I know the two of us, we always have these conversations. We talk about it over the phone.
Yes.
Sometimes we just sit back and we're in a coffee shop or somewhere and just having a conversation about it because as many of you know, so many of us are affected by what we see on television, social media, and also in our personal lives.
Absolutely.
Because I know the other day you were sharing about some experiences you have been through in your personal life.
Yeah, I just... it's racism is one of those things, right, that we need to acknowledge, right? And it needs to be something that we continue to talk about.
Absolutely.
Right? And so, for me, I like I've mentioned this in past shows that my families were blended, meaning, a lot of biracial. And I worry a lot about my 16-year-old nephew, right? We often have to have that conversation with him about what do you do, right? If you get pulled over or, if someone is really coming at you in a certain kind of way and you're feeling that that it's a racist attack, how does one has to behave, right? And so, it's sad that we have to do that, but this is the reality that we're in. I know that so many people, a lot of our viewers are dealing with this on a daily basis. So I'm happy that we are going to have this honest conversation, and really just reflect, because it's a collective effort, right? This isn't about you, me, right? We need to come together as communities to talk about this on a regular basis. How do you talk about this topic with your loved ones? How has this affected you? Because I know. We've had those conversations on the phone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've just been in deeper, like in group settings, and there's a lot of personal pieces that come out when we start really talking about this topic.
I think for myself personally, just traveling and going to different towns and navigating through different towns, in the state of Connecticut, for example, there are 169 municipalities. And out of the 169 municipalities, 153 are predominantly white. And then 16 municipalities where people of color are concentrated. So a lot of times, before I walk out of the house, I have to think about, okay, maybe I shouldn't put on that sweatsuit or that sweatshirt at that time because maybe I'm going here. I don't want to be profiled right away, or the things you have to think about as a person of color, just walking out of your door.
Right.
And the stress it takes. And that because you and I we always just have these conversations about this. That's why when I think about the guests that are on today, they have addressed this issue. And this is something that they are extremely passionate about today. Today we have federal judge Kevin Washington.
Wow, federal judge.
Federal judge.
It's amazing.
Passionate individual who's also the chair of the Human Relations Commission in Windsor, Connecticut.
I've been hearing a lot about this commission, and I'm so excited to talk to him about it. My colleague, who's also a guest on our show, right, Nushette Black-Burke, she works with me in Hartford Public Schools, and she's doing some amazing work in Windsor that she's going to tell us all about.
Yeah, and she also was a person who actually created the resolution for the public recognizing racism as a public health crisis.
I read that in the paper and I was like, I work with her. I work with her. I can't believe that's amazing. I went to work the next day and I said to her, Nushette, that is amazing what you did for Windsor.
Right.
I was like, that's great. And we need to think about doing that, in other towns across the state.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as well, because we also have another guest, Dr. Steve Youngkite, who is going to talk a little bit about looking at it from that angle. In Old Lyme, Connecticut, and shedding a little bit of light on some of the things he has experienced and encountered being in his town, because his town is one of those 153 towns that are predominantly white.
So
and how they dealing
good.
with the public health crisis.
I like that. I like that you were lifting, because sometimes when we talk about this, we think it has to be in certain communities.
Right.
And I love that we're going to talk about some of these southeastern corner of the state towns that you wouldn't think, right? But this is exactly what people are thinking, right? And so to have this conversation is going to be really important today.
Very important.
Great.
So when I think about, racism, what comes to your mind right away when people say to you, because I hear this sometimes, that was a long time ago. I don't really see it as being an issue now.
Really? Race is all around us, right? Like we can't deny that, right? And it's something that you're right, it's something we tiptoed around or didn't discuss at all years ago. And so as an educator, we're getting we're coming to a place, we're evolving, right? Where we're starting to talk about this in our curriculum, in our, just in our school system, and even just talking about equity committees and how we're going to really, lead with, discussions about race, because it's a serious issue. To act like it's not happening is just very disrespectful. Very disrespectful.
Yes. And when I think about the disrespect, it's disrespectful to all the people who died to fight for social justice in this country, who continue to fight.
Absolutely.
And I think about, my ancestors and the thousands and millions of people who were fighting just to be treated as a human being. To be treated as a human being, to be recognized as a human being. Because really what we're talking about is humanity. Humanity.
Basic rights.
And that's why I love the three guests that are on the show today.
So exciting.
Federal Judge Kevin Washington.
I'm excited.
Dr. Steve Youngkite.
And of course, we have Nushette Black-Burke from Hartford Public Schools. She is also working on the council.
She's a town councilor
for Windsor. I'm excited for this guest panel.
So Ron, please bring on these awesome guests. Yes. All right.
Welcome. Yay.
It is so great to see you all.
Nice to meet some of you because I don't know you. It's welcome to the cultural Flipside. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
If you could introduce yourself to the world, maybe say a few things about yourself, I greatly appreciate it. We're going to start with you, Nushet. Just so the world can know who you are.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Kevin and Daisy. And so in full disclosure, I am a mom, full-time mom, and a professional. So of course, I'm here with the kids. My husband had to step out, and then the landscapers are here. So a lot is happening to me right now. So if you hear background noise, please excuse that. But I am a town councilor here in Windsor, Connecticut.
Yes.
The first town, are any of you from Wethersfield? I hope not. But
Oh,
nonetheless,
gosh. Gee,
Windsor is the first town. We were the first town in Connecticut. And definitely what I do by day is I am the chief of family and community partnerships for Hartford Public Schools. So that's a little bit about me, mom, wife, and professional.
Yeah.
That is
Great.
awesome.
Glad to have you.
And Federal Judge Kevin Washington.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Daisy and Kevin, for having me and putting me on this auspicious panel with Ms. Nugent Black and Dr. Steve. I'm so happy to be on with you all. I'm a federal administrative law judge. I handle policies and government procedures for Health and Human Services, Food and Drug Administration, and Centers for Disease Control, as well as the National Health Care Alliance. My area of expertise is everything. And it's up and down the panel, the coast, primarily states from Maine on down to South Carolina. I've been doing that this is my 20th year, I believe. I'm originally from Dallas, Texas, and a proud Southern boy. But I love Connecticut. I love Windsor. I serve as the chairman of the Human Relations Commission, and I've been the chair for, I think, going on 7 years now. It's been a long, long time. All the years begin to blend together after a time. So every day is a new day, and Windsor is strong, and I'm just so happy to be in this little town called Windsor, Connecticut. Never knew it existed.
And Dr. Steve Youngkite.
Well, let me add to all of this by saying that it is a real privilege to share this space, this virtual space. Kevin, Daisy, with the two of you, but Judge Washington, always good to be in this space with you, and Nushet Black Burke. I am so honored to be in this space with you as well. I know that you have originated this resolution, and I need to tell you how grateful I am for the work you did to get that out. It's something that, well, obviously we'll talk a little bit about what it means in Old Lyme, but what a powerful thing. A little bit about me. I am the senior minister of the First Congregational Church here in Old Lyme. I've been here for about 8 years. Prior to that, I was in New Haven. In addition to my pastoral work, I've been a professor of social ethics up at Harvard Divinity School. So I straddle a line between both ministerial work and academic work. Both are important to me. And anyway, I'll simply stop there and say what a privilege it is to be a part of this conversation.
Well, welcome everyone to the show. It's such a pleasure and honor to have you here. We are just really excited to engage in this conversation on today's show.
Daisy, I think it's time to dive right in because
Absolutely.
they look ready.
They're ready.
They're ready. They're ready to have a discussion right now. So I'm going to start off with Federal Judge Kevin Washington here. Federal Judge,
Yes.
what are your thoughts regarding white privilege, and what do you think about people denying racism as a public health crisis? Because when we go back to that resolution that Nushet proposed, right? People denying racism as a public health crisis as well.
Right. Well, I first believe that we need to recognize that that race is a social construct, and it's distinct from ethnicity and ancestry. And race plays an important part wrapped with white privilege in the fact that this has been going on for decades. It's just the awakening has come and gone and come and gone. And although there are many drivers on racial and health equity, uh, it's a systematic and structural problem. We have a lot of problems, as you may well know. There's problems with pregnancy in women, uh, the food that African Americans, Hispanics, and Indians eat was basically the scraps from the table. So that leads to poor diets. We have the highest instances of hypertension, cholesterol, and diabetes. And we die 10 years, 5 to 10 years earlier than we should. So white privilege leans into that by the fact that recognize that you have the privilege and do something to help with the change with the privilege that you have.
Wow. Thank you
is-
so much.
Yes, thank you. That was good. First question. We're diving right in. That's great. Yes, thank you so much. I want to ask Nushat, I have a question for you. As you remember, if you recall, I went and saw you shortly after this whole, it came out in the town of Windsor that, they were recognizing, right, racism as a public health crisis. And I remember coming to you because, for those of you on the call, I work with Nushat in Hartford Public Schools. And so when I saw her in the office, I was like, Nushat, I just read this. And I was like, that is amazing work that Windsor is doing and so very needed. So I'm wondering, Nushat, tell us a little bit more about the resolution for those of us who, don't have that background, and tell us a little bit about the challenges that you faced.
Absolutely.
And again, thank you, Daisy and Kevin, and I'm just excited to be here with all of you. I wish I had like a cool space like Dr. Junk right here, but I don't. I have to use this one. But the resolution came about because in conversations with folks in the state, recognizing all that had been happening in our country and really thinking about what folks were experiencing with the pandemic and then overlaying that with race and all of the what I would consider to be like the modern day lynchings happening around the country, it was like, oh my goodness, like what a convergence. So Takesha Dewan Everett from Health Equity Solutions, she is the executive director there. She did a lot of work and she was championing this cause. And in a conversation with her, we talked about it, and she was like, do you think this is something that you could put forward to your town council? Would there be any will? And I'm like, absolutely, there would be will. Why? Windsor is a diverse town. I grew up here, like born and raised, went to Wilson Nursery School, Clover Street School. These are like elementary schools, graduated from Windsor High. Diverse town. But the issue for me, while I was so interested in this resolution, is that while diversity is just one part, not everyone in our town feels included. And even though I grew up here, recognizing that while my parents may have had a certain level of access, there were people that lived right here in Windsor that did not have that level of access. We're dealing with so many other social determinants that are here in our town. So with this resolution and putting it forward, we wanted to press on that. And with the work that our Human Relations Chair, the Honorable Dr., yes, I'm giving you a new title, Kevin Washington was doing, we decided that we wanted to come together and talk about those social and economic pieces that are impacting our town, racism, and looking at what we can do as a town to address that. Right before this resolution was passed, I want to say the Sunday before, we came together as a town to honor George Floyd. And so for me, we had conversations, we had speeches that helped us understand the plight that people in our town were experiencing.
Wow.
So all of it rolling together is really what I wanted to put before our town council, and it was passed unanimously. But I am not mistaken to think that everybody like signed on because they believed in it. I think maybe some of them thought it was like this wonderful thing to do, but then there was action to that. So I don't want to delve too far down because I'm sure you might have other questions. But for us, all of the things happening in our world, in our country, overlaid with what just took place with George Floyd, understanding the impact that we have been resting on diversity as a town, and trying to like strip that apart a little bit more to say diversity is only one piece, but we definitely need to figure out how everyone in our town can feel included.
Wow.
So that's really how the resolution was birthed.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? I'm curious. What kind of pushback did you receive? Because
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just wondering, right? I can I imagine that you did.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad I'm in good company here. There was pushback that I'm still experiencing. So I was labeled like the troublemaker, like, why would you put something like this forward in a town that, not in Windsor, that would never happen in Windsor. Oh my goodness, we are all tipping through the tulips together. No, I have a girlfriend, she's also a member of my sorority. Our sons are the same age. And he was out riding his bike in his neighborhood where he grew up. Like when they took him from the hospital, that's the house they took him to. He was just outside riding his bike. And somebody called the police on him, right?
Wow.
So understanding those types of stories, I'm like, no, I better put this forward and help people to understand what people are experiencing. So I know I've had backlash because I've told that story. I've been very forthright to say, no, stop talking about it and being about it. So I've received a lot of pushback when we were getting ready to do the mural. I felt like a one-man band for a little bit, and then colleagues came on board and decided to support. When we wanted to do another piece with students or have other conversations, book studies, people are like, not in our town. Like, our town doesn't need it. Our town is perfect. What was that TV show? It was a movie, actually, Pleasantville. And I'm like, no, we need to start adding the color. Like, maybe you don't see the color, but the color is there. Like, let's start adding to our Pleasantville experience. So I have received a lot of pushback. People have told me, you've imploded your political career by doing this in our town, but that's okay. I did it from my heart, and I knew it was something that we needed to do.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's important for people to see, right? Things like this work with equity and pushing, topics around racism. It's hard work, right? Very much needed, right? And but very, like, sometimes you feel like you're alone in this work, right?
Absolutely.
And so I wanted people to hear what happens behind the scenes sometimes that we're not aware of.
And
Sorry, Daisy and Kevin, just quickly, as we're talking about racism as a public health crisis, I just have to add this because May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I know I experienced, just from this resolution alone, the strain on my own psyche.
Wow.
So I can't even imagine what individuals who had to show up for work each and every day, because we understand people of color are the ones that are usually on the front lines doing those type of jobs through a pandemic, and what they had to experience.
Right.
That's just one piece, right, of that intersection of all the things that are rolled up into this public health crisis and racism. So I just had to add that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we know all the chronic stressors that we experience through racism and because of racism. So I just had to add that as we are layering it all together and we go through the conversation, like, I experienced it just because I put a resolution forward on racism.
wow. Nushet, I just want to say thank you so much for your courage and for having, just having the courage to be vulnerable on this show.
Absolutely.
And for emphasizing that this is a safe space right here on the Cultural Flipside. So thank you so much. And when I think about some of the comments that you made, you said our town is perfect, right? What people were saying, it's Pleasantville, right? And then you said not everyone feels included in our town. Right? So that leads me to Dr. Steve Youngkite there. So Dr. Steve Youngkite, because you and I have a lot of conversations all the time, every week. And we talk about Old Lyme, we talk about Eastern Connecticut, and those 153 towns that are predominantly white in the state of Connecticut. So the town of Old Lyme has not recognized racism as a public health crisis. So why do you think that is, Dr. Steve Youngkite? And what type of support do you need to make this a reality?
Those are great questions. I too want to just circle back, Nushet, to your comments. And just the pressure that you've been under, and just say thank you for what you've done. Once again, I mean, I think it's so powerful. And I guess I'm not surprised to hear of the stresses and strains that it's brought on, but that it has brought it on. I just think it's an incredible thing that you've done for the state of Connecticut, frankly. So in terms of Old Lyme, Kevin, yes, it's true. This is one of the communities that has chosen not to pass this resolution. We have 3 Board of Selectmen, one of whom brought the resolution forward last summer. And our other 2 Board of Selectmen have declined to even take it up publicly. They've declined to have public conversation on it, and declined to even consider passing this resolution. That led me to put a letter into the New London Day, an op-ed, detailing all the ways in which Old Lyme has been built upon a history of racism, enslavement, and racial exclusion. So this dates back to the pre-colonial period, and it continues all the way through the 20th century. And I find it outrageous, frankly, that a white community like Old Lyme refuses to recognize that racism is a public health crisis. I think it's embarrassing. I think it's shameful, frankly, that there's an inability to recognize that this is an ongoing thing. So the line that we are fed about why the town refuses to recognize it is that to adopt the resolution makes it seem as though Old Lyme has a race problem. And it is this crazy, it just is, it's hard for me to comprehend how that interpretation is being arrived at. And it's hard for me to comprehend how failing to act on the resolution indicates anything other than the town of Old Lyme has a race problem. So anyway, I think that's one of the things that I keep hearing again and again. But in terms of getting it passed, in terms of getting it considered, I just think we need more concerted pressure on our selectmen. We need people in town to come out and say this is a really, really important thing, and it's important for even a place like especially a place like Old Lyme, to adopt this and to recognize this.
You know, I'm listening to you, Dr. Youngkite, and I will tell you that living in southeastern Connecticut, not in Old Lyme per se, but just in this corner of the state, and listening to you and just nodding my head in agreement, right, as what you're lifting here, because it's so important. And one of the things that resonated with what you just said is, how do they not know, the principles in which this town was built, right? And to me, what makes me think about is these kinds of conversations we're having, like knowledge is power, right?
Absolutely.
And to me, it's like the more we need to collectively talk about, these are the facts, right? I bet you might not know this about this town. I'm wondering that more and more of those truths need to come out for people to realize, no, this is a real issue, right? And to act that it's not is actually perpetuating the problem, right? And so so thank you again for lifting that, because oftentimes, what you mentioned about, acting like, oh, we can't agree to this resolution because then we're admitting there's a problem, right? And, we always say first step is let's get to, action here. And that in itself, not acting is actually really alarming, right? And it's actually what's most disturbing. So thank you for sharing that insight. So I'm going over to Federal Judge Washington. Again, it's really great to have you on the show. And, you know, I'm really curious about this Human Relations, right, Commission. And I know that you are the chair. Can you
Me
talk?
too.
You are too funny. Can you talk a little bit, and you know, to us? I want to learn more about how this committee has been beneficial, right, to the town of Windsor. And do you think that other towns could benefit from such a committee?
Well, thank you, Daisy. I think Ms. Nugent knows us well. We try to serve the residents of Windsor through a part of our mission is to educate. And we have also events that occur and, you know, online sessions that we've been having since last year, since the pandemic, conversations on race. We have various topics. This commission has been going on since the late 50s, early 60s. And even though, like Nugent said, that, you know, we are a diverse community, it goes without saying that, you know, people are always saying, well, I don't see race. Well, we need to see race. It's important for us to see race. It shows our differences. It encourages diversity. And it makes me want to get to know other people and other cultures. So that's part of the mission. Part of my mission is keeping, as the chair, is to keep this commission bipartisan. It's not about pointing fingers and saying your ancestors did this or you feel this way. It's totally education driven and event driven. And everyone is invited to attend all of our events. It's not polarized. It doesn't matter what part of town that you live in. Everyone is welcome. As a prime example, a lot of people don't know about Juneteenth. We have a Juneteenth event coming up. You know, I had one of my own commissioners ask me, "What is Juneteenth?" What is Juneteenth? You know, it's educating people. It's not pointing a finger, and that's what this commission does. Other towns, similar towns, do have this kind of commission. Some call it Human Rights Commission. Some it's Human Relations Commissions like ours, and some don't have a commission at all. It's encouraged to encourage that diversity, that education, but you have to have commissioners and leaders that are willing to accept this and are willing to adopt it and not be bipartisan with it. I think that's a very important aspect, and not be the kind of people on the commission to point fingers and say, nanny boo boo, you shouldn't have did this. You know, it's not that kind of thing. It's about education and promotion of culture.
It's about education and promotion of culture. Thank you so much, fellow Judge Washington, for emphasizing that.
Well, yeah.
Sure.
Can I just mention,
Yeah.
that sounds to me like, yeah, I do think other towns can benefit from such a commission,
Absolutely.
right? I'll be the first to say that. I mean, just like I said, that sounds like a space where you're going to talk about these important topics, right? Thank you so much for sharing that.
And you know, I love the fact.
I just wanted to tag on that. You know, it's also such as educating people about different cultures. You know, there's low income, low rates of unemployment, poor diet and stress, and it's using your vehicles like the conversations on race that we have once or twice a month to educate people. We have about 30 attendants every session. And our last session talked about the movie 13th, which is about the 13th Amendment. And I understand that Steve Good with the Hartford Current wrote a story on us for being willing to ask our audience to look at that movie and give their feedback. And that's exactly what we did. We didn't accuse people or point fingers. We let people voice their opinions and say what they have to say. And that's how we all learn, because this is our space is non-judgmental as well.
You mentioned, Mr. Washington, about the attendees, right? You
Right.
said there was like 30, I think I heard.
Correct.
Who's allowed to come? Like when,
Anyone across the
Good
state
point.
of Connecticut. If they live in London, England, we will let you in. All you have to do is just click on the link.
I think that's really important to know, because before you even, and I'm being completely honest, before you even said all that, I was like, oh, I wonder, if this is an exclusive group, who's part of this, but
No.
that is very important for people to know.
It is not everyone is welcome.
Great.
And I just also want to thank Judge Washington for always asking me to facilitate some of those conversations as well. I appreciate you asking me, because
You're
I've
very
learned a
welcome.
lot from those conversations in the community.
You're very welcome. You've been a very important part of our programming, and I hope that relationship continues much longer.
Thank you. You emphasize we need to see race because it shows our differences. And when I think about you, Town Councilor Nouchette, right? And I just, in my head, I go, geez, Town Councilor Black Burke, right? As a leader and a woman of color, how do you deal with the people's false narratives about the importance of acknowledging racism? And how do you remain inspired and empowered despite the challenges that you face on a daily basis?
Wow. Thank you, Kevin. That is a powerful and so layered question. As a woman of color, I was the only woman of color on the council. I completed another woman of color's term. I left our Board of Education in Windsor and moved over to the town council. And being a woman of color there, what I find is that I do have to educate. And I know some people are almost annoyed at the level of education that takes place or you have to do. But I think the only way to stamp out ignorance is to educate. So as a woman of color, I find myself doing that a lot of times. And I try not to assign motive to what people do, because I'm one of those people that I usually see the glass as half full, right? So when someone does say something or you do something, people have heard me say at the dais, okay, let's pause for a moment. That is a microaggression. If you don't know what that is, let me help you understand what it is. And then from there, walking people through. And I was having a quick conversation with a colleague most recently about the nooses that were found at the Amazon facility in Windsor.
Yes.
And she made a statement. And I was like, okay, hold on, let's process that piece. And after we had the conversation, she was like, honestly, I didn't look at it like that. She said, I guess it was my own, she used the word stupidity. I said, no, that's not it. Because you have not walked a mile, half a day, any of that in my shoes. So how I view and how you view will be different. But my role is to help educate. Now, there is a difference between those folks who want to understand what's being said and apply it to help shape their viewpoint than other people who are just stuck. And so if for some reason you appear as if you are stuck, I'll provide the information, but then I have to also protect my own peace and leave it there with you and allow you to come to that realization and actualization on your own. But I will provide you the tips and the tools. How do I keep myself motivated? Really, I have these two little boys. Well, one's taller than me now. I have these two fellows, right? That I look at them and I realize what my parents had to deal with. I realize what I'm still dealing with. And I'm also looking ahead because I have boys, I have Black men. That's like, it lands differently as a mother. It just lands differently. I have Black men. Not that our Black girls don't matter. So that is always my inspiration because I'm also educating them, but I'm fighting like hell, right? At different access points and also having to measure the dosage and how forceful I come sometimes because I need to ensure that they have better. And so it's been however many hundreds of years and we're only at this particular point and we have so much more to go. So that is the fire the fire in my belly each and every day at work, Daisy, when I'm dealing with the parents, at the dais with the town council. That is my constant motivation. That is my constant motivation. I quote James Baldwin all the time, like, I love him. Have you read, the essays of the Native Son? You should read them. Great material. So I'm always talking about facing things. So if we don't face it, there's no possible way that we can honestly change it. And he talks about that. So things can't be changed until they're faced. So that is my motivation. I'm going to face it, do it. If I get beat down, get back up and keep going. So that's what keeps me going, Kevin.
Wow, thank you so much, Town Councilor Nushette Black-Burke.
That was powerful, Nushette. And just so you know, having as a fellow colleague, she rocks it, right? Despite what, she may be experiencing, you would never know, right? Because she is boss lady, right?
Right.
she's just doing her thing, right? So, we are, super proud of the work that you're doing, Nushette, and in our district, but, particularly what's happening in Windsor. Thank you for, really lifting the voice of a woman of color, right? Because, that space we need to talk about too. Right? And so that's really important. Thank you for your words. Speaking of race, I want to go into Dr. Youngkai. I have a question for you. Okay. And so I'm curious, as a white leader, why do you believe the acknowledgement, right, of racism as a public health crisis? Why do you believe that is so critical?
I guess I believe that predominantly white spaces like Old Lyme have a particular burden of getting out of their whiteness and recognizing the lives of others, recognizing what other people go through, and recognizing the ways in which we have been implicated and have perpetuated a system that has caused suffering for other people. So it feels very, very important to me to recognize that a predominantly white space like Old Lyme isn't. It's not a bubble. It's a very, very porous sort of place. We have people that come in and work here in Old Lyme. We have people that live in Old Lyme but go and work in other places. We have all kinds. It's a porous place, and we need to be in relation with other communities. And insofar as we're not recognizing racism as a public health crisis, I think what we're saying to our neighbors is, we don't really care. We don't see you, and it doesn't matter to us. And again, I just find that to be an outrage. So I think it's really, really important for predominantly white communities to lead on this, because we have been the source of so much of the problem. I think it's incumbent upon us to help to push things forward. So anyway, I just see that there's so much work to be done in a place like this. And we're not alone in that. There are other places that also have a lot of work to do. But insofar as we're in this space and I live in this space, I want to try and move things along, because I think we do bear some responsibility for racism as a public health crisis.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's absolutely right about that one.
Absolutely. I love how you're lifting that, actions speak a whole lot, right? And silence, as we have talked about, is complicit, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So it really powerful
Silence
work.
speaks very loud.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Now, earlier in the show, I mentioned that there are 169 municipalities, as we all know, in this call, and 153 municipalities are predominantly white. And 16 municipalities are where people of color are concentrated. So on a daily basis, even in the state of Connecticut, we just focus on Connecticut right now, there are people who never come in contact with people of different racial backgrounds. And as Dr. Youngkai mentioned earlier, people don't even acknowledge that racism is a public health crisis. Because, they don't really see some of the issues that people of color are facing on a daily basis. So the question I would like to address to Federal Judge Kevin Washington, and then I would like to also address the same question to Town Councilor Nushette Black-Burke, and then Dr. Steve Youngkai, is racism is affecting so many people on a daily basis, as we all agree in this call right now. How can we get more white allies to recognize racism as a public health crisis? Because so many people are dying on a daily basis from so many factors, systemic issues. And how do we leverage our collective efforts to prioritize this at the local and state levels? I want you guys to really think about that, because this is affecting so many people, and we know this, but we need to collectively come together. How can we do it? Federal Judge Kevin Washington, then Town Councilor Luchette Blackburn.
I think the primary way to do it is by education. And you can't make people, want to be a part of the change, so to speak. You can only lead a horse to water. You can't make them drink, right? So the goal is to educate as many people as possible. And from that pool or network of people that are willing to be allies or friends or part of a movement, that they will perhaps go out and educate their little networks, and each one reach one. Is a favorite motto of mine. That's important. On the federal and state level, policies need to be changed. It's just not enough to take a class and say, okay, I passed this class on discrimination and civil rights, and I'm good to go. I took a class at work on discrimination and microaggression. It's not enough to do that. You really need to do the work, be invested in the work, and be a part of the change. Just like Dr. Younghite, he's going out, he's speaking, he's writing letters to the newspapers. It takes these kind of allies to make change and make a move. And it's not all on white people. African Americans, Hispanics, American Indians, all cultures need to be, Jewish people need to be involved. Asian Americans having problems, being beaten in the streets. This affects all of us. Racism affects white people and everyone else. It's just not, racism. It's a public health crisis to African Americans. We realize that. We know that. We live it every day. We've lived it. We continue to live it. Only 5% of the physicians in the United States are Black or African American. We need to change that. We need to educate more of these kids into STEM research and the sciences and mathematics. We need that. We need to educate our own as well. So it's on us to make change as well.
Wow, thank you very much, Federal Judge Kevin Washington. Now, same question to Town Councilor Luchette Blackburn.
Ooh. Judge Washington, he said a whole bunch.
I talk too much, I know, Nugent.
No, not at all, not at all. It needs to be said. What I would add, and I think this, is an area in education, yes, and educating on all levels, municipal, state, but I also feel that people, constituents, citizens, taxpayers, I wish I could find a way to take their collective voice and make it heard. I think if untold stories are finally told, then folks will start to realize that this, I'm going to use it again, Dr. Junkite, this Pleasantville experience, it's not really real. And so I think as we are looking at how do we continue this, so education, yes, but educate and allow room for people to really share those untold stories. There's so many things in our state, our cities and towns across the 169 that have gone untold.
Yes.
A hotel worker, I believe it was New London, she was just minding her business, doing her job.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And she was pummeled simply because
The mystic.
just, And if she did not tell that story, would people really have believed that it took place? So I think as a part of our education, as a part of trying to drive this forward, we have to leave space to tell those untold stories and need forums like this, Kevin and Daisy, for people to feel free to do that. So I think for me, I would add that piece to education. I'm going to go ahead and I can only be myself. I'm a minister licensed in the Church of God. My husband and I need our faith-based leaders to find their voice.
Amen.
Yes, preach the love of God, but also speak to hate, right? And so for me, those are the two groupings that as we are looking to move this work forward, and how can we continue to ensure that this moves, untold stories, and I need our faith leaders to educate and to also be okay with sharing this. So I hope I didn't miss any parts of the question, Kevin, because I'm like, I was so caught up with what Judge Washington was saying, I might have missed something. But for me, in addition to education, just really taking those untold stories and highlighting them. I think the more it's in front of people, the more people will start to believe that this is real, it's not made up, and it's actually happening across all of the municipalities.
Awesome.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Town Councilor Nushette Blackburn, for sharing that with us all.
Thank you.
And the last one for Dr. Steve Youngkite. Same question for you.
I do believe it's about education. I do believe it's about getting getting the word out there. But I guess I want to use what little time I have to urge my white brethren and sistren to find their voices and to get out and make a difference, and to start agitating about racism as a public health crisis. I think it's important for particularly for white church leaders to be doing that as well. I mean, we have immense power to shape public imaginations. I mean, I get to speak to, I don't know, 200 or 300 people every week. And if you multiply that in all of the different churches in different communities around the state, I mean, that's a lot of people that you can reach. So I just feel like there's immense opportunity and power there. And so I would love to see more predominantly white churches and pastors doing that kind of work. But I also want to leave on this particular note. I really like, Judge Washington, what you said about creating these non-judgmental spaces, spaces where people feel free, spaces where people feel open. And I think that's a really, really crucial thing to recall as well, that insofar as we can invite people into this learning mode where we're not pointing fingers, but we're actually helping hearts to crack open. That's the kind of thing that I would love to see happen more and more. So I don't know. So if we can do that, and insofar as we can continue to all show up for one another and support one another as we do this crucial work, yeah, I'll go anywhere around the state and talk about this stuff. So anyway, but know that I deeply appreciate all the work that all of you are doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
so
Steve
much.
Youngkite. Thank you.
Matters tremendously.
Appreciate that.
You know, this past year has been very exhausting, and it's taken a toll on all of us. And so many people are just frustrated, you know, and we just continue to watch television and see the news feeds, and we continue to see people, you know, go through certain situations that we're just like, will this ever stop? You know, these racist acts happening in our nation, throughout our country, all the time, right? And for many of you in this call, you are agents of change. Can you leave the viewers who are watching this show today with a quote or a statement that you live by to encourage them to continue moving forward? I'm going to start off with Town Councilor Nushette Blackburn.
I was like, ooh, hopefully he doesn't call me first.
I know.
You never know with
You're
Kevin.
it.
Well, again, I can only be Nichette. And I shared this earlier at a press conference that I was at, but I do live by it. And I say this to people, my manual that I live by, there's a verse of scripture that says, we are persecuted or cast down, perplexed even, but we are never destroyed. And when I do talk to people, and I'm talking about all of it this year, folks who have experienced COVID, who have lost people to COVID, folks who are still being profiled when they drive in and out of their homes to go into the city or out of the city to go to work, whatever your plight has been, you have a loved one who, their sentencing or whatever they're experiencing has been locked up because the courts were closed and you couldn't find a public defender. There's just been so much that rolls up into all of this racism as a public health crisis, the conversation itself. That is what I have to say to you. You might be perplexed, you could be distressed, cast down, but no, you will not be destroyed. You will not be destroyed. If you need help, seek that help. If you need someone to speak to, reach out to your faith leader. You can call 211, reach out to someone, but make sure that you are getting it out, talking to someone so you don't keep it locked in. When you keep it locked in, that's when you feel like you are really about to break. So that is what I would have to say to folks. Again, you will not be destroyed, but get the help that you need. And even if it's the neighbor next door, find somebody to get that out to, so you yourself can be better and you have someone to walk with you.
Wow.
So powerful.
Thank you.
Great words.
And Dr. Steve Youngkite.
All right, I'll offer one very quick one and one a little bit longer, but one that I actually steer by a lot and come back to a lot comes from a guy named Reverend Peter Gomes, who was the chaplain up at Harvard for many years. And I was at a conference with him one time, and I remember him saying to this conference and to all of us gathered there, do not fear the chaos. A little chaos will not hurt you. And I found that very, very encouraging. As we create a little bit of turbulence and create a little bit of chaos in our towns, I think it's necessary to realize that a little bit of chaos, the good kind of chaos, not bad chaos, but the good kind of chaos, what John Lewis called the good kind of trouble, that's not going to hurt you. And it might even help an awful lot. That's one thing. And the other thing is something I say to my congregation every single Sunday at the close of our service, which is to go out into the world in peace and to have courage and to hold on to what is good and to return no one evil for evil and to strengthen the faint-hearted and to support the weak and to help the suffering and to honor all people. So I say that every single week, and it's something that I steer by and I come back to all the time. Have peace, have courage, all of it. It's something that I need, and I think it's something that we all need. So that's what I got.
Awesome.
I love it.
Thank you, Dr. Steve
Thank you
Youngkite.
so much.
And Federal Judge Kevin Washington.
Yes. Well, I have two too. One is when you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and treat others as you want to be treated. Are two of the main ones that I live by. And I'd like to add a third, which is keep the conversation going. You don't know what you don't know until you know it. That's a paraphrase on Oprah. Learn, be willing to learn, open your mind and accept the differences in people and ask the inquisitive questions. No one will belittle you for wanting to be informed. And education is ongoing throughout our lives. It doesn't end at K-12. So it's always ongoing. Even as older adults and older people, we continue to learn forever.
Right.
It's a blessing from God to keep that going.
Wow.
Amazing. I just want to thank each of you, your inspiration, just your, your thoughts, your stories, right? Your journey. It's been really amazing for me personally to hear them, because this is such a very important topic. And you've all captured in one way or another through your own voice about the importance of telling our story and keep moving the conversation, right? And that is so important. If we leave with anything from today, it's that, right? And so thank you. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, each one of you, for being here. And continue, as Dr. Young-Kite mentioned, causing that good trouble. We need you.
Thank you, Daisy and Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Daisy.
Yes.
I want to also thank you all for your courage and your dedication to this mission, and just for always continue to fight for this cause, even when the doors and people are sitting behind saying, maybe we should go this direction. You continue to stay sailing and moving forward. And I just want to thank you so much for your vulnerability, for being able to have the courage to be able to have this conversation today. And you have inspired me on so many levels. You are incredible individuals. I love you all. I love the work you all are doing.
Yes.
And I just thank you so much for being on this show and for allowing the viewers to be able to hear that they still can plant a seed and create change in their own communities.
Absolutely.
It just takes them to step up, vocalize how they're feeling, and remember to treat others the way they want to be treated.
Amen.
Because this show is all about, today's show is about humanity and treating people as just human beings and recognizing them for who they are.
Absolutely.
So I love you all. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so
you.
much for being on the Cultural Flipside today.
Thank you for being here. And you
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Mother's Day.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Daisy.
Have a good one. Be safe.
And we honor our bridge builders tonight. Thank you, Nugent and Kevin. So I'm off to bridge builders. I hope you welcome the new class of bridge builders.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I'll be on for a little.
Bye-bye.
Amazing.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Have a great day.
That was awesome. Wow. Just thinking about,
Wow.
some things, the highlights I took from this conversation today. When Judge Kevin Washington said, each one reach one.
Yep.
And he said, it's not enough to take a class.
Right.
You have to do the work. And the work is on a daily basis.
Yeah, every day.
And it's all about reflecting on your own biases and all the baggage that we carry as adults,
Right.
and realizing that we have to work on ourselves. And all of us have these biases and these preconceived notions.
Yes.
So we have to realize that, yes, racism is a public health crisis, because there's certain things that have been passed down to us, and we have to check ourselves and treat people as human beings
Absolutely.
and really recognize that.
I think for me, what was really resonating, right? I think when Nugent was lifting the fact that we need to encourage and engage our faith-based leaders, right? That is so important. We talk about love, right? We talk about the good word in the Bible, but are we talking enough about these issues, right? In our faith-based communities? And so I love that she lifted that. And another one that really struck with me is these untold stories. The stories. And it brought me back, as soon as she said that, it clicked for me back to like my own culture and my upbringing and just sort of like my roots, right? And being a Puerto Rican woman, I didn't really even know about, the history that we have had, and that we were Taino, we're part, we're a mix, right? Of cultures and different races. And I didn't get that until college. I didn't understand that. My parents didn't teach me that, and I didn't learn that until college. And it really is so important to engage in these conversations and do so from young, right? So people, really start to grow up understanding and learning about different cultures and people from different identity,
in your
right?
history.
And in just being confident in who you are and where you came from, and trying to learn from others, right? And that to me was a powerful message.
Absolutely.
Getting those stories told, Absolutely. I just, it's a really great show.
Yes. You know, I want to thank again Federal Judge Kevin Washington, Dr. Steve Youngkite. I want to also thank Town Councilor Nushette Blackbird for being on this show today. Racism is a public health crisis.
We cannot deny it.
So let's go to God on this one because we need it.
We
need to definitely pray. Father, thank you so much for this day. Thank you so much for this time. Thank you so much for the viewers listening to this show. And thank you so much for the guests that were on this show today. And God, help us to continue treating others the way we want to be treated. And just looking at people as human beings and coming together as one so that we can move our communities and our state and our nation in a positive direction. And help us to continue living by faith and not by sight. God, we love you and we appreciate you. And we thank you so much.
Thank you.
Remember,
Amen.
everyone, you can pray anywhere. If you prefer to do something else, meditate.
Absolutely.
Take a walk.
Self-care.
Self-care is extremely important. But remember, let's continue spreading that positive energy around. Let's continue being our best self.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us today. We are so pleased that you were able to take some time to listen to the Cultural Flipside.
We love you all. Have a wonderful day. Have a great day and stay positive.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Peace.